Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder it's time to have a look at some news, and I apologise that I'm a little bit late on some of this, but to be honest, I've had quite a busy day, so therefore we're going to get stuck in. The first thing in War Thunder is the fact that we are going to get some new clouds for air battles. Now obviously this affects aircraft and also helicopters, or airplanes and helicopters I should say, and maybe from the ground it would affect them, but understand that these changes are only for the highest of graphical settings. They will mainly affect movie and max, and you can see here our developers have been able to increase the integration steps for clouds rendering by 4 times whilst avoiding visible FPS changes. So pretty much showing that the system overall is getting much more efficient. You can see the new stuff on the left and the old stuff on the right. There's a lot more foof, there's a lot less gaps in it, and I'm just wondering if this is going to affect an issue which I've talked about before. So I did a replay of myself playing an aerialistic battle and showed how you can spot dots through the clouds from massive distances, and it mainly comes down to a rendering issue, but also something that can be enhanced through changing graphical settings. And I'm wondering if this is the first step towards trying to deal with an issue like that, or if this is just, let's have a look at how nice the clouds are. Now, a lot of people are also bringing up the fact that the clouds were really nice before these new sets of clouds. Not the ones on the right, but the ones before the previous set of what we have now. And I would say that the clouds that we have now are still a drastic improvement over the old ones, just because of the amount of weight they seem to have compared to before. And now these new ones, with the increased fluffiness and with the increased density of these clouds, they look a hell of a lot better. So one thing this will mainly benefit, obviously, is cinematics and stuff like that, and I can't wait to see how people use these to enhance the cinematic feel of specific, cinematography videos which are made in War Thunder. I am still a massive fan of people like Heiichi, it's very sad that Heiichi stopped making videos a few years ago, because his War Thunder movies were some of the best in the business, and I hope that at some point we get somebody in the community who is as good as that at that time, to be able to watch and enjoy the long form movies basically that he used to make in the War Thunder community. But overall, this is nice, of course, but the main news for today is we are getting 2 new locations. Now, luckily, Gentle Spee already talked about these in his 1.89 data mine, but we do have Around Me, which is always fun to go around, so we'll do that in a little bit. The 2 maps are Volcanic Island and Smolensk. The Volcanic Island is a naval map, and the Smolensk map is a aircraft map. So we're going to go through Volcanic Island first. There are some shots of it. It is based around New Zealand, with seascape, rocks, vegetation, and nature around there. So maybe somebody can tell me where this is in New Zealand, because I've personally never heard of it, but then again, I'm not a geologist, and I don't know a ton about New Zealand's geography. You can see that there are massive cliffs around the place. There are also a ton of vegetation around there, and of course water, since it's a naval map. If we have a look here, let's just go into this mode, and maybe we can not turn any of them on, because it'll get me a little bit confused. Oh, the frame rate, I apologize, I don't know why it's sticking to about 20. But you can see that there is a ton of interesting vegetation. We are going back to what seems to be the browns and greens for this map, and even though it's nice to see some of the old style, we have some wonderful Mediterranean maps which are filled with colour, filled with light browns, reds, blues, and it's very hard looking at a map like this and not feeling a little bit disappointed, because, well, it's all green and brown. It's just, it's an unfortunate thing with landscapes, right? It's just one of those things you've got to kind of get used for. Sorry. One of the other things as well is we can actually see where the cap points are going to be. So you see the smoke, the areas. There's going to be a cap point in the middle here. It'll be interesting to see how big it is. And then we have a cap point over here, and also a cap point over here. Now, obviously the central cap point is designed for smaller boats to fight around. The two larger ones are designed for larger boats, destroyers like cruisers, even heavy cruisers now that we have in the game. So it's definitely looking like this area is going to be a smaller tier map. And then when we get to the larger tier, they're going to expand it out to involve all of these areas. And personally, I think that's a good idea. That's how they've made a lot of their maps. It makes the map design very easy to do. And it's kind of interesting because a lot of people always poo-poo the designs that Gaijin make. And then when you actually sit down and ask, okay, well, what do you want to see? The suggestions are non-existent. And therefore, when it comes to maps like this, where you have areas which have cover, where you have areas which are more open, where you have areas which can get cut off via torpedo, such as this area here or these areas here, I feel like this gives many opportunities, especially in Naval Arcade, to be able to do something. There is also, here, seems to something has happened. It looks kind of like a landslide of rocks, and you can even see there's some kind of chunk out of this rock. And this kind of got me thinking, are we going to see terrain be able to be annihilated, which isn't just houses? In the last few maps that we've had, terrain destruction has been quite a large part of them, being able to level houses. We even seen on maps such as the American Desert map, there was a push towards adding house destruction to that. What is going on here? Because it literally looks like, to me, a chunk of the rock has been knocked out and it's just fallen. Now, I don't know whether that's been done by a bomb or whether somebody's just artillery strike this area, but this looks like a rock avalanche. Very odd. And also there's a little boat here. Now, let's do a little bit of a competition, right? So, let's see if any of you can figure out what this boat is. That's going to be fun. Anyway, the map itself looks very standard to the other naval maps. As I said, it would be nice if the color palette was a little bit more expansive, but I understand why it isn't. I think the general map layout looks good. The general idea of mixing smaller boats and larger boats I still don't think works too well, but if you're going to go down that route, this is one of the only ways that you can do it effectively, so it's nice to see another map with that similar design. Now, Smolensk is one I am very much looking forward to because of the two pictures we have here. Now, we only have two pictures, mind you. We have this, which shows a massive railway. Remember, Smolensk was an area, just like many others, which were filled with production facilities, which were filled with a lot of I suppose manpower, you would say it's in World War II, and it was a key place to fight over, which is why the battles of Smolensk are incredibly important. This one seems to be based around the autumn of 1941, which was, of course, in part of Operation Barbarossa. You can find the battle right here if you want the Battle of Smolensk. And we actually already had a historical operation in World War mode, which is based around the Battle of Smolensk, or just before it, I should say, the lead up to Smolensk. This one, the Battle of Vitebsk. And it's all about the German advance, as you can see here, moving on to Vitebsk, and then eventually going on to the Battle of Smolensk. So once that rolls around again, and we have the Smolensk map, hopefully we can use this map in air battles or ground battles or whatever is happening. There was also a Battle of Smolensk in 1943, and this is where the Soviets kind of got their own back against the against the Germans. So in 1941, the Soviets fought against the Germans, and the Germans were on the offensive, and they were able... The Soviets threw everything at them, and they weren't able to stop them, but they were able to put a big dent in the German advance, and but unfortunately the Soviets lost a ton of mainly tanks and also aircraft. Now, when we look at the, it significantly blunted the advance, especially towards Moscow. When we have a look at the 1943 Battle of Smolensk, though, this was the Red Army clapping back in a big way. Andrei Yermomenko and also Vasily Sokolovsky taking on Gunther von Klug. And if you don't know who von Klug is, he was one of the commanders of the 3rd Panzer Army on the Eastern Front. And the second Battle of Smolensk was when the Soviets just ramroded the German 3rd Panzer Army. They enveloped them, they annihilated them. It was not a very kind fight to the Germans. And it was another one of those battles where the Soviets actually lost quite a lot when it came to its losses. But overall, it was a massive advantage because they were able to annihilate the 3rd Panzer Army. And that means that they could just push on past it. So, obviously, the battle here seems to be what this location is built around, but there is a chance that there could be a later battle which is also based around this exact same place. Kind of like the Battle of El Alamein and that map. This map kind of has the same ideas. So you can see what looks like Smolensk itself. There is a ton of train yards. One thing that we can kind of see is some trains, and something that, I've talked about for a while. There is a hidden train in War Thunder. The hidden train itself is on the Soviet test drive mission. You can see it going past you on the left-hand side as you take off. And I've said for a long time it would be lovely to see trains inputted into aerialistic maps as soft targets. And if you wanted to put AA on them, or if you wanted to do anything like that, sure. And if you wanted to expand the idea from them taking supplies to specific zones, like let's say that a bombing zone gets annihilated outside of Smolensk for the Soviets. The Soviets airfield or around that, or basically around Smolensk itself, send out a train. If the train gets to that bombing point, it gives it some health back, or it gets it back online. If it doesn't get to that point, then the train dies and your team loses tickets. They send another train and so on. So it would be a light target style bleed if the enemy was on top of it. I think this would be a really cool idea. I also like the idea of being able to bomb train platforms and train areas or supply platforms if you want to see them like that. There is a lot of expansion you could do into trains. A lot of people focus on the battle train idea, the train which has a lot of AA guns on it and also some larger guns. I would much more prefer to focus on the supply side of things, because then you can start connecting different objectives together. One of the things to me that has always been odd about aerialistic is you have the zones, you have the airfields, and then you have normally the defending or offensive troops. All of these are massively disconnected from each other, and it doesn't make a lot of sense having them all on the same battlefield. So if instead what you do is you set up a battlefield where if a base gets destroyed or hurt, then the airfield can respond to it with trains or with supply trucks, then it makes sense. If an army gets hit and it has to retreat, you can send trains close to the front line or supplies to the front line to try and back it up. The whole idea is to create an environment which feels alive instead of parts of it which are alive and others which are completely stationary. And trains and supply lines and all of these things, or paratroopers even, definitely add to this idea. You could also expand it into World War mode, protect the train, that could be a mission type instead of protect the convoy. And the fact that they've highlighted two screenshots here, which both massively show trains, makes me, or I should say train tracks, and there's maybe a train in this picture, leads me to believe that that is going to be the big thing for this map. And if not, and it is something like France 1944, where there are some new ideas employed, I'll definitely have a look around it. I'll definitely see the little areas, and also I'll try and find the HD areas, which are normally changed into ground forces battles. Last of all, Really like the volcanic island map. As I said, it seems very standard. Would be nice to have a little bit more contrast. Smolensk opens a lot of doors, which I am very, very happy to walk through when it comes to this game. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, John Ryman, Martinez, Matity, Moxie, Nito, Nick Graham, Alobralo, Sebastian Corona, Super Cacti, and Elove Goats and Seductive Trashcan for supporting the channel.